and served as a member of several international advisory panels and non-profit groups. In appreciation of his outstanding achievements in the field of material science, biology, and engineering education, and for championing the cause of women and minorities, and in recognition of his vision, dedication, devotion, and contribution to the cause of science and society, SRM University considers it an honor to confer on Dr. Subhra Suresh the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa. Your Excellency, the Chancellor of SRM University, it is with immense pleasure that I present to you today Dr. Subhra Suresh for the conferment of the degrees of Doctor of Science honoris causa.
I request Professor Subhra Suresh to come forward to receive the honorary degree. Also, I request His Excellency, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, to present the degree of Doctorate of Science honoris causa to Professor Subhra Suresh. By virtue of the authority vested in me as the Chancellor of SRM University, I admit Professor Subhra Suresh to the degree of Doctorate of Science honoris causa in the university. In token thereof, you have been presented with this degree and authorized to wear the robe ordained as the insignia of your degree. I invite Professor Subhra Suresh to deliver the acceptance speech.
Much. Your Excellency, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Chancellor, Pro-Chancellors, and Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, faculty, and students of SRM University. I'm truly honored and delighted to be a part of this convocation. Let me begin with a saying by Dr. Jonas Salk, who's credited with eradicating polio by creating a vaccine for the disease. He said, and I quote, "Our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors. Whether your studies today are in science, engineering, medicine, management, humanities, or the arts, I hope that your accomplishments as students and as professionals in your career will take you through a lifelong journey that will make you great ancestors. Science and engineering are increasingly seen as the necessary ingredients of innovations by countries large and small. And SRM University has the same vision. Through education, prepare students for innovation. This aspiration by countries large and small, just in the past few decades, have lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It is the same vision with which my own organization, the National Science Foundation, was created. In the early 1940s, Dr. Vannevar Bush, who was a professor of electrical engineering and the first dean of engineering at MIT, wrote a very influential report called Science, the Endless Frontier. He sent that report to the President of the United States. At that time, it was a revolutionary idea. And Dr. Bush's vision was very simple and straightforward. And he realized, and he articulated in his report, that science and engineering and fundamental discoveries are absolutely essential for innovation, and that innovation best takes place in universities that shape, mold, and nurture young minds, young students, undergraduate students, and postgraduate students. Of course, they work in partnership with industry and national labs. The first time that report was sent, it was rejected. Then in 1950, the President of the United States accepted that report and created the National Science Foundation. I never had the opportunity to meet Dr. Bush, but as Dean of Engineering until last year at MIT, I had the great honor and pleasure of occupying the chair that he once did. And I'm really fortunate to head the agency that was created based on his vision. The National Science Foundation today has a mandate to support all fields of science and engineering, including the social sciences. In its 61-year history, the National Science Foundation has supported the research of 195 Nobel laureates before they received the Nobel Prize, including many of this year's Nobel Prize winners. Just to give you an example, the two colleagues who received the Nobel Prize in Economics just 3 weeks ago both have active NSF-funded research grants. Another example of the impact of science and engineering on humanity and the world. In 1995, the National Science Foundation supported 2 young graduate students at Stanford University to do basic research in mathematics and computer science that at that time did not have major practical applications, known practical applications. The students were Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Their work led to the creation of Google. So did fundamental science and engineering lead to innovation? Did it create jobs? Did it contribute to the economy? Did it change the world? You decide. In the last 61 years, NSF has also supported research, basic research, that led to the discovery or creation of fiber optics, GPS, Doppler radar, magnetic resonance imaging, rapid prototyping, behavioral economics, as well as DNA fingerprinting. Science and education, as well as human capital development, are very much part of NSF's mission. I grew up in Chennai, and as was mentioned earlier, I went to the US in 1977. The students who are graduating here today You are growing up in India at a time that has offered extraordinary opportunity of having a window to the wonderful diversity of ideas and cultures. And India today is a rising star in this very diverse galaxy. So from my vantage point at the National Science Foundation, through various strategic planning exercises, we have the opportunity to ask many questions about the challenges we face in science today, especially in the context of global society. And equally, we ask questions, what is so exciting about science and engineering today compared to, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? I can give many answers, but I can give you one very simple answer. There are many, many exciting things about what we do today, but I can very broadly categorize them into two groups. This is what I call the new era of science and engineering in the year 2011. The first exciting part of this is what I call the new era of observation. The research that we support and the tools that we have today enable us, on the one hand, to look at the outer edges of the solar system, discover new planets with a scope, reach, and resolution that is unprecedented. So this is the era of observation in the mega, the giga, and the extraordinarily macro scale. At the same time, we support nano, pico, and femto, really, really small things. We can take a single molecule, a neuron, a cell, a molecule inside the neuron cell in the human brain, and we can study its properties with a resolution that could not have been there 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We not only study the biology at the molecular level of the human brain, we also study with unprecedented resolution the psychology of the human mind, and we combine the two. NSF is the only federal agency that not only supports natural sciences, it also integrates the research of natural sciences into social sciences. And this is a unique and very powerful combination. So the new era of observation is not just from experiments. We have an experimental facility that we just finished at the geometric South Pole in Antarctica, and I'll be visiting that facility 2 weeks from now, right at the South Pole, that does experiments on neutrino physics. And that provides an opportunity not only to do new science on a global scale, but also engage in science diplomacy with 15 countries and use that for education to excite young minds. The new era of observation also comes from computational simulations and modeling, and also from citizen science. You can take a handheld phone, an iPhone or an iPad, point it to the sky, and you can correlate and identify galaxies and stars. So a young child, maybe 5 or 10 years old, in a developing country, can use one of these devices and gather data that can become part and parcel of a real-time data network that is used by an established scientist who may one day receive a Nobel Prize. That's the power of the new era of observation. The new era of observation is also creating a new era of data, information, and communication. So we have unprecedented volumes of data that are created by experiments, computations, and handheld devices and the web that are traveling almost at the speed of light around the world. And we just learned a few weeks ago that maybe the speed of light doesn't have the upper limit that we thought it did. So one of the challenges we have is that the massive amounts of data go unvetted around the world in a nanosecond. So this provides us a challenge in trying to archive, store, retrieve, and also extract meaningful information out of large amounts of data and create useful knowledge out of this and store it for future generations. So we need new science to look into this. So the new era of observation and the new era of data cover every field of science and engineering, and they are changing the way science is being done today. So with this exciting opportunity to the new graduates, I have very simple 3 take-home messages. Message number 1, the 21st century is a century of science and technology for the average citizen of the world. You don't have to be a scientist or an engineer to contribute to science and engineering. But if you're an average citizen of the world, you need to have a minimum level of knowledge in science and engineering just to succeed in the global competition and to collaborate in the global environment, an increasingly globalized world. Through this opportunity, you can change the course of humanity and history through science. Think of handheld devices, Twitter, Facebook, and instant communication that's connecting billions of people around the world and causing tectonic changes in global geopolitics. So that's my first take-home message for the graduates. The second take-home message, science and engineering will require a clear understanding of the human condition to have the fullest impact. Look at Google, for example. It was created out of very rigorous mathematical research. But you have to understand how all the mathematics that goes behind search engines interacts with human beings who speak very different languages, come from very different cultures, and how they interact with it. Another example, the first engineering research center funded by the National Science Foundation in 1988 was in weather prediction and tornadoes. And it has produced wonderful results and software that are used all over the world. It has created companies. But still, 3 months ago, people died in Oklahoma in the US from tornadoes. It's not just because we have a limitation in predicting weather patterns. It's more so because we don't know how people behave when they are presented with warnings about weather systems. This is what I mean by the human condition. Technology alone is not enough. We have to understand how humans interact with technology, and that requires studies of policy, studies of economics, social sciences, humanities, and I would argue the arts and culture. So that integration is extremely critical. So if you're majoring in sciences, medicine, or engineering, please do not ignore the importance of the human condition. This is very important for the future of the planet, for sustainable energy, sustainable environment, sustainable water availability, transportation, climate change, etc. Therefore, in the 21st century, an excellent scientist or engineer or doctor is one who also appreciates and incorporates in his or her work social sciences and the humanities. A very integral part of this is also having the right professional ethics, professional integrity, and institutions and infrastructure that ensure them. My third and last take-home message to the graduates is that with increasing globalization, any talented individual from anywhere in the world can find opportunities anywhere else in the world without leaving his or her village, city, or town or country. And therefore, always have a global perspective, even if you work only in a very local environment. Global competition requires global thinking. It also requires collaboration without necessarily traveling long distances. So let me finish with a story about the importance of science that's not appreciated by most societies at this time. Oftentimes, especially in the current global environment where economies large and small have serious financial difficulties and economic constraints, there is a tendency in government as well as in society to ask the question, what is the value of science? What is the value of fundamental research? Will it create jobs tomorrow? Will it contribute to the economy? We cannot lose sight of the long term. So here is a story that was narrated by the former British Prime Minister Maggie Thatcher in a recent autobiography about an encounter between the famous British scientist Michael Faraday, who first produced electricity in his lab, and the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, or the Treasury Secretary of England, William Gladstone. When Mr. Faraday met Mr. Gladstone asked him, "What is the value of your experiment on electricity? What do you do with it?" To which Mr. Faraday responded, "Sir, one day you will tax it. And you will tax it many, many times." And tax they did. So I tell our policy makers in the government that the value of the National Science Foundation is the following. Every year we receive approximately $7 billion from the US taxpayer. But if you look at the income that the US Treasury receives because of the innovation created by the National Science Foundation, annually it's many, many, many times the $7 billion. That's the value of science. That's the value of engineering. That's the value of innovation. It's always long term, and we cannot take our eye off the long term. We have to focus not just on the near term, but also on the long term. So with this, I wish the graduates all the best of luck in your careers, in your journey. I congratulate you. I salute you on your accomplishments. I also congratulate your family and friends who have supported you through this journey. As you take your journey through your career, I'm confident that with a degree from SRM University, you will become what Jonas Salk said, a wonderful ancestor to future generations. Thank you.
I invite the Chief Guest of His Excellency, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, to deliver the convocation address.
Distinguished invitees, Vice Chancellor Dr. Panna Vaiko, Registrar Thiruseturaman, members of the Board of Management, my dear young graduates, faculty, staff and students. It's a great pleasure to participate in the 7th annual convocation of SRM University, present the doctorate to Dr. Subra Suresh, the distinguished engineer and professor, the degrees and medals to the rank holders, and address you all here this morning. At the outset, I congratulate Dr. Subra Suresh, Director, National Science Foundation, for his contribution in the field of science and engineering, and all the young graduates for their achievements. In the knowledge race in this 21st century and rapid globalization, the quality of higher education has to be enhanced on par with international standards. India has been and is a country of maximum global exchanges, both in sharing and exchanging knowledge. India is blessed with brain power and manpower. India's more than 70% of the population is below 35 years of age. What is worrying is that our country's gross enrollment ratio is only around 12.4%, which is much less when compared to the world's GER of 23.2%. Equipping our large human capital with the right skill and knowledge and maximum utilization of the human potential will make our nation a developed one. Universities and higher educational institutions are the key to developing our future citizens. They should be geared to play a decisive role. They are the repositories of nation's intellectual wealth. Universities and educational institutions have an onerous responsibility in providing quality and knowledge-based education, catering to the rising expectations and emerging challenges in this changing global scenario. Regulating and revitalizing higher education sector is the need of the hour to provide education on par with international standards. I congratulate SRM University for working with a mission to make it a world-class university. Its initiatives to provide students a unique learning experience, to empower them and to instill in them a flair for creativity and innovation deserve commendation. The designing and launching of SRM SAT by the students of SRM University stands testimony of this. I congratulate the students of SRM who have designed the SRM SAT nano satellite. It's a matter of great pride, not only to SRM, but also to the students' community. I am also sure that the students of other universities and colleges would emulate them and be innovative and creative. I am told that the SRM SAT, which is built at a cost of 1.5 crores, would monitor greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and water vapor in tropics using a grating spectrometer, and it is the first of its kind that the nano satellite is launched by a private university in our country. Sir C.V. Raman, the great scientist, said, "Research is civilization and determines the economic, social, and political development of a nation." I am happy to learn that about 34 major research projects with a total outlay of about 2,621.34 lakhs, which were funded by the Minister of Health and Family Welfare, DRDO, ISRO, UNICEF, etc., are being carried out in the university. We need to promote research in all spheres to enhance and improve quality. This will lead to innovation. The nation needs more and more innovators. The educational institutions and universities should promote research activities. The initiatives taken by the SRM's International Advisory Board to build a stronger international dimension in curriculum, research and teaching methodology deserve all appreciation. Technical education imparted should ensure that students develop a sense of lifelong learning and acquire self-learning skills. The students would be provided enough opportunities to enhance their knowledge. Developing core competency, knowledge, and ability in students are imperative to face the corporate world. I am pleased to learn that SRM University has entered in 78 different MOUs and agreements with the various leading universities and industries to provide quality education to its students on par with international standard. Education is not merely acquiring knowledge, it's also leading to true life. Our nation has great hope in the younger generation. Character is destiny. It is the intellectual ability and technical skills coupled with good conduct and character and sincerity and hard work that will take you to greater heights. You should excel in all your future endeavors. Great opportunities